We'll get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly webinar series with Parsec. I cannot believe that this is our last webinar in our harmful language series. Over the past month and a half, I believe, yeah, we've been able to talk about what it means to create these safe spaces, build trust, but also be able to respond with harm, with care and accountability. And so today we're going to be closing out the series, talking about tools and resources for responding to harmful language. And our ask for the next hour is just stay open like you all have been, stay reflective, ask a ton of questions, because that's how awareness changes into action. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to our CEO, Babatunde, to give some words, and then he'll pass it on to the amazing Dr. Barfield to start off our last session.
Thank you, Shay. And first off, I want to again thank you guys for just participating and being engaged in this series. It's a very special one, near and dear to my heart. I have three children, and my son in middle school had the N-word written on a stall, and it made me like think about and reflect, like not just me as a father and then trying to navigate like that with that situation with my son, but just all the, frankly, the kids seeing all kinds of harmful language. N-word is one of, unfortunately, many harmful things kids do to each other, adults and kids, etc. And it's just unfortunate. And at Parsec, one of the things we greatly value is student voice, and we have been blessed to have a number of students elevate and exercise their voices to share how the impact of these things in their lives, and especially in educational settings. And so some of these things are like, I call it the elephant in the room. And instead of us kind of shying away from it, we were leaning into it and saying, what can we do to resource this correctly? And a number of you may have seen the N-word video. Raise your hand if you have, or virtual hand if you have seen that video. We created the video in order to help as a educational resource to talk about the harm and the impact of a word like that. And what we said is, let's take it a step further and build out different ways to engage educational leaders across the country. Even we're seeing people coming in and talking across the country about this in our harmful language series. And so I just want to do first off say thank you to Shay for her work, especially behind the scenes. There's a lot of work that goes into preparing this behind the scenes. And I'm very thankful for her work and effort to put this together. I also want to thank Dr. Barfield for taking her time and her expertise and her resources to really build out the content for this series that we're doing. And then, of course, Star and Kim, other people on my team as well, supporting, again, behind the scenes to making this happen. So I'm really thankful for a team that really cares about these types of topics and uplifting this to something that hopefully can be meaningful to you in your school systems. So that's what I just wanted to say. It started off with that, like, really negative thing happening directly to me and my family, my kid, and trying to figure out a way to leverage our resources to support not just that situation, but just more broadly this very challenging environment we have where harmful language is being used rampantly in our school environment. So with that being said, I just want to hand it off to Dr. Barfield.
Thank you, Babatunde, and thank to Parsec for even trusting me to lead this conversation. Thank you so much for, filling my cup, because a lot of times we carry this water, and a lot of people don't see the struggle of the carry. And so, so grateful for you to lean in. And I even want to say, tell your son thank you, because it took courage for him to even say something. And I know we've discussed that, how it's hard for our students to even speak to harm. So please thank him for me for doing that, because it has led to a lot of educators over the last month and a half, or last month at least, to really ask the question of how do I fix this? So make sure that he knows that his voice has truly elevated a conversation to bring hope and change. So I want to say that publicly to him. And to all of you that are on today, thank you so much for being with us over the last 6 weeks, I think, Shay.
Yeah.
Just looking at this topic, really leaning into it, and allowing me space to be there. Today, it will be really open. I'm sure you're going to have questions, and I want you to know that this is the time to start. If we don't touch on certain things, for you to ask of that. Um, and then lastly, I want to elevate my organization, Black Students of California United, which really started with students of color in mind, in elevating their voice, teaching and training them and cultivating them into advocacy. But even more than that, it was to transform school districts and the way that they how they engage with them. So proud. I mean, people this morning, they're like, Dr. Barfield, how you feeling? I'm exhausted because I just spent 4 days with 1,600 high school and college students in San Jose. So I am tired, but I'm inspired because I saw what the future holds for us. And so thank you for allowing BSCU in your space. I do want to acknowledge one of my founding board members is on this call, who is a professor at UC Merced. That's Dr. Mariana Harris. Thank you, Dr. Harris, for all your support as well. All right, Shay, you ready to kick this off? All right, let's go. So today we are going to really lean in on identifying key response protocols. A lot of times we struggle on how we address a situation. Sometimes our reaction can actually trigger a more harmful response or reaction. So we're going to lean in there. We're going to explore restorative and student-centered approaches. I know everybody thinks that everything we do is restorative. It's like, tell Bobby you're sorry. That's not necessarily restorative. So we're going to talk about some different things that we can do when it comes to dealing with these highly sensitive situations, right? And then last, we're going to talk about how to connect with your district and community partners. Believe it or not, people say, oh, they were a diamond in the rough. No, they're not in the rough. They're right there, right? We just have to know how to approach them, how to engage them, and then how to implement some of the expertise that they may have that could benefit where you are in a certain situation. So that's kind of where we're going to go today, along with some resources that we'll share towards the end. Okay. All right, Shay. So I'm always going to lean back to how we started this work. And the question was, why does this matter? Because for some people, it doesn't. It's like, hey, sticks and stones can break your bones, names never hurt. Yeah, we already know that's a lie. Words do hurt, whether they're said, written, whatever. Okay. So we have to keep in mind always that language shapes identity, belonging, and confidence. So a child that is being called the N-word or a beaner or whatever these racial slurs are, those things hurt and it can really damage their confidence and also creates that sense of, oh my gosh, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome. Like, do I really belong here? Is this really where you know what I mean? And it can also lead to some very dire mental health issues. We have seen an uptick in suicide yet again over the last couple of months. So we want to make sure that we're addressing these things and we find where our comfort zone is and then moving away from that comfort zone. We don't need to be comfortable right now. More than ever right now, we do not need to be comfortable, okay? We want to talk about how words can uplift. What are those words? What are those phrases? What are those situations? What are those stories, right? That can really help our students, especially as educators. Sometimes just grabbing a book off the shelf that speaks highly of someone or something can be probably one of the most powerful moves that you can make. And then building awareness. This isn't necessarily for the kids. Sometimes this could be for the adults on your campus. Unfortunately, in 2025, I still hear people say, I had no idea that that was that. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's 2025, right? So we want to see how we can support you as the educational leaders, how to build awareness, right? I heard something at this conference that I was at, and if you've never heard of the Umoja Community Educational Foundation, they're a major part of our community college system in California. And they really, I mean, they have 18 principles of learning and growth, and it was just amazing. But we heard one of the speakers talk about allyship. And we hear that a lot these days, right? It's like this group and their allies. And what was said is why do we lean in and congratulate so much allies to certain groups when really it's about humanity? It shouldn't be Black people have to depend on white people or other people or vice versa for anything. If this is important to you in the care of students of color or otherwise is important to you, it should be a network thing. Everybody should think that. It shouldn't be, well, our allies over here are going to help us. We're just going to tap on our allies. No, awareness brings about net worth. Okay. And so I want us to understand I appreciate my white and Hispanic colleagues that are in this work with me, but I don't call them allies. I tell them it's your duty to do this. It shouldn't be about allyship. I'm not going to give you a patch for doing the right thing on behalf of kids. We shouldn't do that. So, and they kind of get us into this mindset that way. It's like, I'm special. No, we're human. We care. We love. We elevate. Okay. So this is where I will lean in on that building awareness that leads to stronger community trust. All right. All right, Shay. So our definition from day one for harmful language was these things. These are the words and things that include bias-based comments, slurs, or exclusionary remarks that cause harm to reinforce inequity. So, you know, things like, you are so smart for a Black girl. Why does that determine anything? It should just be, you did a great job. Way to handle that. Great job. The expectations, the level of expectations that we have. If you wouldn't say it to another kid, don't say it to this one. Okay? We have to keep that in mind. That's the inequity, because the minute you say that to a kid, they're not going to take that as a badge of honor. They're going to say like, okay, what's wrong with me? And then it turns into the next level of kids calling that kid an Oreo or smarty pants, or you're acting a certain way. We start eliminating the communication, we can start diminishing the harmful language components that are happening. Words can build or break your community. I don't know who said it, but they were absolutely right. In classrooms, on your campuses, in your community, if we really challenge people to watch what they say, it can impact and change the way people do things. So for me, those students, whomever they are, that wrote the N-word on the bathroom stall at Babatunde School, they have obviously heard this, and it's been encouraged over time. So for them, writing that was funny because someone in their space, they have heard this term. And no one brought to their awareness that that terminology causes harm. It hurts your friend. It's not funny. Okay. And I'll lean in more on that when we start talking about different steps you can take when it comes to circles and things like that. This is where you can start really eliminating a lot of this language that's happening. All right. So I'm going to ask of you that are on the call right now, how does harmful language show up in your school or in your district? What drew you here? to this space? Where are you seeing it and how is it presenting itself? And you can just come off mute if you want.
Well, I work at a independent study homeschool. So our site is modeled around parents being the educators. And it's interesting to me sometimes how parents will talk about their own kids, or how grandparents or aunts and brothers and sisters, whoever's showing up as the home educator, will talk about the student. And sometimes it's very uncomfortable to have to intervene in that family dynamic where you have to try and say like, hey, like just the other day, I had a mom who was comparing her son to her daughter, and you could just see him kind of shrink down in real time and just trying to refocus the conversation. I'm like, that's great for her. Let's talk about what he needs. So it can just be really difficult because you're not just dealing with like the school environment in our situation. It really is like the family dynamic too.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to lean in there?
Okay, so hi everyone. I just posted a link in the chat. And so if you look at the picture, that was something that was actually posted in a teacher's classroom. Um, very harmful. It's a map if you click on the link, and it has all of these just very negative generalizations of different countries. And this was in the teacher's room. So the teacher posted this, and I'm an administrator, and I went to my high school director. I'm like, this is this person. He had it up. The person wasn't here, so I took it down. And so I followed up actually this morning, which is why this is so fresh in my head. And I go, what conversation was had with this teacher? And she was like, I just gave it back to him and told him that he shouldn't have this up. So no HR documentation, no conversation, like almost like she's gonna ignore the racism and the harmful language and just the harmful message sent by this teacher's map. So I'll just leave that there for now.
Thank you. Wow. I clicked on it just for a second because I was like, okay, I want to see what it is. Anybody else before I go on?
I I think as people are thinking about it and just seeing that image and the response, unfortunately, is not a surprise, right? Like it's the silence is what aggravates me the most. It's like pretending that we're all for all kids and all this, just kind of generic language I hear in education. And it kind of sometimes, and I'll be pretty blunt with everyone, it makes me want to puke because the inauthenticity uh, is just incredible there. When we say we care about all kids and blah blah blah, it's just talk. And then you see these types of things and nothing gets done um, in any kind of meaningful manner, any resources put into it. I think that's why we're in the state we're in because people with power in those situations, i.e., the administrator, nothing gets really truly done. And so it just continues on as if just like the N-word thing, right? It just could it just continues on like, oh, well, it's just how it is. And then you're gonna say, I care about all kids, right? Like in the next breath. And I think that's what is even worse. I actually would rather have people be radically honest and just say, you know what? I'm not doing anything about it, and I don't care about all kids. Wouldn't that be refreshing?
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing this, Nicole. And thank you, Kelly, because I'm glad that we had the two different dynamics, right? Here we have someone that's dealing with independent study, where the parent technically is the educator who's laying out and performing these duties, right? That are coming in. And then you have a teacher who's in a classroom who sees absolutely nothing wrong with what they're doing. And there was, I mean, unfortunately, it's going to come down to one person saying something that starts changing and transforming how things are done. And it's a hard thing to take on, right? It's like, hey, that ain't my job. But on behalf of children, it is our job as educators. Because if a child is walking into that space and seeing that and they're offended, and no adult says anything to address it, then they lose trust in the entire system and everyone in it instantly. Because, like, I know I see it, I know they see it. And let me tell y'all something, these kids are bright, y'all. They they pick up on stuff that I don't even catch sometimes, right? So we have to, as I said at the beginning of this, we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable, or else we're gonna lose. And it's not gonna turn out well for us. I said at the beginning, find your comfort spot. Now move away from it. We're not going back to that space. Okay. Mafi said in the chat, the N-word is thrown about as a term of endearment amongst the Latinx scholars around the Black students and teachers, almost as if they think it is a part of what Black community members are okay with because they may hear it in music or music that Black students listen to. Our school does not have a systematic response to this. That last sentence right there says it all. There is not a systematic response. And sometimes systematic responses start with one individual, and it can be you who are on here, just bringing it to the attention of those in charge that this is a problem and we need to work on it. If we're going to change our climate of our campus, if we're going to improve on parent engagement, if we're going to improve on just engaging with the community, we have to look at these things. Okay. And we're going to share some resources with you guys to take back with you to even engage in. So thank you, Mafi, for sharing that. And just remember, this is our definition. So this is the foundation from whence we're going to move forward. Okay, Shay. Babatunde did mention the harmful language video. If you have not seen it, if you have not registered to get the password for it, here's the QR code that'll get you connected to it. And I'm sure Shay and the team will send out a link post this session. But if you have not watched this video, I am going to impart upon you, just scan the QR code, lock it in your phone, and make sure, that you, your staff, your administrators, your school board members, watch this and start the process of understanding why these things are so important, especially now. Our kids are seeing some crazy stuff on social media. They are seeing madness, but there needs to be a fundamental place of learning. And I don't care who it is, a Black student, a Latino student, whoever. Watch this video and watch how it transforms the way that they start doing things. I guarantee you. So, all right. So with that, and then again, I think there's a link up. There's a link in the chat too. So if you couldn't scan the QR code, the link is there. All right. So we want to move. You can click them all, Shay. We need to move from I didn't mean harm to accountability. That's where these resources are going to challenge us to move into. So we need to move from being dismissive and allowing dismissive responses, which is, I didn't mean it that way. That's dismissive. That allows someone to just kick it off. There's no growth happening. There's no questioning. There's no space for restoration if someone says, I didn't mean it that way. Now, the only way I didn't mean it that way works is if ownership happens. And that happens when someone says, I didn't mean it that way, and I really want to understand how I harmed you. They are asking the question necessary to actually improve a situation. Dismissiveness will not work. And if we continue to allow it to happen, which means, for instance, a teacher in a classroom making an offensive comment, there has to be some action to that. It can't just be, okay, we know you didn't. Okay, so just don't do it again. No. Was there learning? Do they understand what they said and why it harmed a student? I don't care if it's just one kid that was harmed. It's harmful, because if the teacher laughs it off, that means the students will then learn to laugh it off, and now you're creating another problem. With Babatunde's son, this wasn't the first time that an N-word incident took place in that space. It should have never gotten to writing it on a bathroom stall. It should have been dealt with when it was said at the beginning. But because there was really, the ownership component didn't happen amongst the adults, the kids kept going. Does that make sense to everyone when I say that? It's like, don't just brush it off. Don't be dismissive about it. Because ownership is the only thing that brings about change. If I know I've said something to harm somebody, I'm going to learn why it hurt, understand where that came from, so that I don't repeat the behavior. Period. And a lot of our HR departments don't know, as Mafi said, there's no systematic response. They don't know what to do, because there's anti-Black sentiment, there's anti-migrant sentiment, there's anti-immigrant sentiment, there's anti-Asian sentiment. And sometimes we don't know who possesses those things, which will allow for dismissive behavior, which then leads into confrontation between your staff, between our students, between our community members. So these are the things that we have to begin to work on. Go ahead, Shay. So accountability and action, again, looks like this. You got to listen without being defensive. If somebody's bringing something to you, don't automatically put your wall up. You can't. It's the only way the uncomfortability can be a space where it's like, okay, I get it. Okay? You got to acknowledge the impact. It's a little different for me now, right? Somebody calls me a Black B word, I react differently than I did 15, 20 years ago. 15, 20 years ago, I'm going for your throat, right? But now I'm like, you know what? I'm really sorry you feel that way. What leads you to believe that about me? You come back like that, they're kind of like, ooh, okay, wait. Well, what I meant was, this is how we move. Same thing is for students. You know, how we address maybe some of their academic deficiencies. How do we know they just didn't have, if you're a 6th grade teacher, how do we know that their 5th, 4th, and 3rd grade teachers were not good teachers? We don't. How do we recognize that their learning process might be, hindered because, as we heard from Kelly, we have a parent that just doesn't believe in their ability to learn? So we have to take these things into account, right? And then once we learn those things, make the adjustment. Like I just said, 20 years ago, I'm going for your throat. My adjustment came as, I now understand, I know who I am. I know where I come from. I have students that affirm me, that thank me, that love me, that show me their excellence. Those things can lead to, if we're constantly exposed to the best of our cultures, whatever they are, you move different. And the same thing goes for our students. I do a GMA Student Leadership Academy. Right now I'm working in Madera and Madera Unified. And let me tell you, we can see the shift happening because these kids are being exposed to positive components of their culture. So now they are becoming the teacher. High schoolers are now looking to reach out and mentor middle school students. And they do it with confidence. And they explain to them why. So that's a little less that a teacher or an administrator will have to do, because the kids are leaning into their advocacy spaces. It's important. Okay. And then after you do the learning and adjusting, you need to revisit and repair. When I say revisit and repair is, so I use this practice called RIR protocol. It's recognize, interrupt, and restore. RIR. It's Dr. Nancy Doan. If you've never heard of her, look her up. But she teaches us how we have to recognize when we hear something that makes us uncomfortable, and then identifying why these triggers are happening. Why am I feeling this? Why is this bothering me? If you're seeing, like Kelly shared, you're watching a kid sink in real time, you have to be able to identify that and work with that, and then restore it somehow through a compassionate conversation, asking important questions. Okay. So this is what this action plan looks like. And it's going to be uncomfortable, but you will grow from it. It will make you a better leader. If you're a principal, you master things like this, I see you being one of the best superintendents in your area, because superintendents need to have these types of personalities and characteristics in order to really build the district and the students in the community that they serve. Okay, Shay.
Dr.
So
Barfield,
yes, go for it.
um, if you just go back one slide, Shay, the reason I'm saying this is because I think that these steps make a lot of sense when we're thinking about accountability and action, but it feels like a very challenging to implement at the ground level. So listen without defensiveness, acknowledge impact, right? Like I've seen it where people think they're doing it and they're not listening without defensiveness when a student shares what's going on or from and it's like, oh well, it's some students feel when you're doing that it's almost a flip. They feel like you're gaslighting them, and so I just wanted to just share and just make sure these steps are powerful, but it's actually critically important to work on that and build capacity in your adults in your system, the educators in your system, to actually do this because it's not easy to do. Um, and that's why the N-word video was created, to help people create a little bit more empathy and understanding why the N-word's such a big deal. So then they say, oh, I see now why. And it reduces your guard to not be as defensive about it's just a word or whatever. And then acknowledging the impact and learning and adjusting and revisit and repair. So anyways, I just wanted to share that, Dr. Barfield, like especially because I could see a world where in the school sites that people are working at, where it could be very challenging for all the adults in the system to implement this and operationalize this.
Thank you. And that is absolutely, and that's why leaning into this, I keep emphasizing this is not going to be easy work. But if you're modeling the steps and the protocols and the things that need to be done, you'll feel better, because it begins to resonate with you like, oh, okay. And you'll see who you work with and where they are, right? What they always say, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So why continue to have weak links? If you're a team, on that school site, then you work together, right? So, okay, Shay, go ahead. So I want to give you, remember the 4 A's of this work, and that is to make sure you acknowledge what happened, ask for clarification, right? Before assuming intent, affirm shared values if they're there, and if not, we got to work on that. And then 4 is adjust your language moving forward. A lot of people say, why do I have to keep changing? Because the world is changing. It's not the same anymore. So we have to make adjustments for everybody. Okay? All right, Shay. So what does that look like, Dr. Barfield? Go ahead, Shay. Let them all fall. So first thing as your steps, you need to ensure the safety of those involved and de-escalate the situation. Now, let me pause right here. De-escalation is more than just a physical terminology. Okay? And what I'm saying is, we're not talking about just kids fighting. You sometimes have to help de-escalate a child's emotion. I need everybody to grasp that, because we do a bad job of addressing the emotional escalation of students that we deal with. A kid gets called the N-word, they walk into a bathroom and see that word, you can best believe that their anxiety is on 1,000. And we don't, because it's not physical in nature, we neglect to ensure that we have de-escalated the emotions involved. Because we do that, this is when we start seeing, when you think, okay, we dealt with it, and then by the end of the school day, they're in the playground and they throwing down because we neglected to de-escalate. Okay? We have to be mindful that de-escalation is not just a physical thing. We're not just breaking up a fight. We also have to ask those questions of, are you okay? Where are you at? On a scale of 1 to 10, where's your emotion? If you're looking at body language, if that child's fist is clenched, if their shoulders are hunched, if you're noticing them, they're not de-escalated. And you owe it to them to give them the space, create a space for them. Okay? We got to remember that. I had a conversation with an administrator. I was like, as a Black student in a predominantly white and Hispanic space, you're always on the defensive. Those children are on the defensive, it seems like all the time, because they're the ones getting a lot of the microaggressive things. Okay, so let's remember that and ensure they're safe. How are you feeling? We don't want a child going home harming themselves. We just don't. Okay, so those are 1 steps. Document and communicate the incident. I believe in documenting environmental spaces. What was happening, what caused it, what was the situation? Because you're going to need this information when you start reaching out to your community partners and those experts. They're going to need to know, what am I working with? What are we working towards fixing? Okay, so that's what I mean when I'm saying document and communicate. Talk to somebody. Don't hold this on your own as an educator. Woo, that's the worst thing we do. We hold on to all this stuff and then we're stressed. We got to learn to communicate these things. All right, and then engage impacted parties for restoration. Now, when I say this, ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear. Please do not ask a child immediately after they've been harmed or they're involved in something to say, hey, say I'm sorry. Don't do that. That is a no-no. Okay? Please don't do that. And don't say, hey, we need to get you guys together so you can talk this out. Don't do that either. This is why I say you need to de-escalate first. You put a child who's been harmed, who's been called the N-word, who's done has experienced something horrible, and you're going to tell them you're going to sit in the room with this kid and y'all going to talk it out. You're going to make it worse. Give it time. It's okay to give it time. But in giving it time, it doesn't mean you're not doing the work to fix it. Okay? Talking to parents. Finding sometimes here in Fresno, we have called on our clergy so much in some situations, but sometimes they're the person for you. right? They can be your support mechanism. Your other local organizations, regardless of, what, this is that opportunity to build that safety net. Okay. Now, what are the follow-up pieces? Avoid punitive only responses. It can't just be you're suspended and you're suspended for 2 days and then they come back and we've done absolutely nothing. We cannot be just punitive. There has to be action and there must be correction. And the correction has to impact your space, not just that kid. It has to impact the space. Okay. And then prioritize accountability and healing. Back to that teacher that said something. It's about accountability and it has to be the priority of the administration. Has to be. Now, how do you do that with kids? You go back to the top. We start thinking about how are we going to talk this through and how are we going to work this out so that we are definitely creating healing spaces. Okay. Any questions? And you can find a lot of this information. It's right there, learningforjustice.org. It's a great resource to find a lot of different things for you. Okay. All right, Shay. So your strategies. Yes, you can use circles, but please don't let that be your only aim. Circles don't work for everything. They just don't. Circles are just, sometimes those are the worst things you can do because sometimes kids really want to share their feelings and get support. And sometimes when you create these circles, the other people that are involved in it aren't ready. So you can actually create a much more unsafe space. Okay. Conflict mediation. This is where you can bring in a clergy or a counselor or a psychologist or someone who can be the mediator. Because if you have somebody who's not familiar with this space, you can really create a mess. Okay. Teachers, whether I love teachers, but sometimes they're not equipped to deal with certain situations. And so to throw a teacher into a situation like that they're not prepared for can really damage them as well. So what we don't want to do is create these damaging situations. Okay. They can be a part of the learning, but they shouldn't be the mediator. Right? Because the students need to know I can trust this person because they were there listening and they understand, as opposed to being the decision maker and somebody feeling like they took their side over mine. Does that make sense when I say that? So we just got to be mindful of how we move in those spaces. Reflection dialogues. Okay. I was working with a school, y'all, and I'm going to say this. Please stop asking these kids to write out incident reports or reflections when we know they cannot write. We got kids that can't write. Let's just say the thing. Okay? Because what you're doing is you're bringing forth out of them something they cannot do, a deficiency, which can harm certain situations. This is great with is it, I'm sorry, Babatunde, Project Real? Did I say it right? Okay. This is where Project Real can be a huge asset for you because you're asking these kids, hey, just record for me. How are you feeling? How are things going? Some of them prefer to text message. Hey, use a text message. Tell me how you're feeling, right? Let's just make sure that we're using different avenues of collecting this data so that you as the adult in charge know where you're going and what you're working with. Okay. You'd be surprised what kids can tell you when you just ask them to share out. And it's important to do that. Okay. And then always have your counselor follow-ups, and please make sure your counselors just aren't saying, hey, Billy, how you doing? Feeling better? Great. Okay. See you later. Have a good day. No, that's not the follow-up we're talking about. Sometimes you got to go a little deeper. How are you doing? How have you recovered from this thing? The only way you know how they recovered is if you take them back to it and let them address that for you. Okay. And then team and family collaboration. Got to start building trustful relationships. I appreciate people like Kelly who are actually ingrained in working in the trenches with families and seeing this in real time. because it really leads and can support someone else when they're in those situations, right? Parent-teacher conferences, they need to be, I remember my mom used to go to parent-teacher conferences. They were real. I mean, remember sitting there, my mom giving me the side eye when the teacher says, yeah, she talks a little too much, or no, she's not getting that done. It's okay. We don't see that now because our teachers are afraid of our parents. So we have to rebuild certain components. Okay. All right, Shay, go ahead. So here is your sustainability plan. These are the things that myself and you guys met Dr. Lisa Mitchell in our last session. She and I, we're always pounding the pavement and putting our ears to walls, trying to figure out what's out there that could possibly help the rest of the educators in our state and in our nation. So Dr. Mitchell did create a uh, a resource list, very short, but I mean, it's just a few things that can actually lead you as you research and go into those things of other things. But we created a resource list for you. And then Epic Education, I talked about Dr. Nancy Dome. Her work is phenomenal, and her team, if this is something you want to do on a large scale, right, like district learning, I recommend Dr. Dome and her team with what they do. If there's something smaller that you're wanting to do that's more addressed to you and your immediate team, I am more than willing to come in and support you on that. Dr. Mitchell is also available to come and help you with that. But it's important that we start with the compassion. We have to build compassionate mindsets. All right. There's a bias response toolkit, learning for justice again. Sometimes people don't know where, I think we call it unconscious bias, right? They don't realize this toolkit can really help any admin team in resourcing their team, their staff, their teachers, their faculty, their para educators, in understanding the students that they're dealing with. So we can start curbing some of this off. Okay. And then your data review cycles. These are things that you can do alongside within your district. So it's gathering data now, like, okay, what are our attendance numbers? Do we have a chronic absentee problem? Are there some behavior referrals that we're seeing an uptick in? Why are we seeing that? And then implementing some of these practices and then doing it again. Okay, how did our numbers do? Did their grade go up? Did this teacher see an increase? So data review cycles are important in doing this work, because that's how it sustains itself, because you'll know which direction to go. So you're not putting all your apples in one basket and then you're realizing, oh, all my oranges went bad over here because I was focused here. Okay. Power of partnerships, consultants, me, Dr. Mitchell, and others, community organization partners that are out there, your community schools. I don't know if many of you, if your schools are considered community schools, but all of these community school groups have directors within the districts. Call that person in. Say, hey, listen, this is an issue that we're having, and I know you have access to some things. Can you give me some things? Have you learned of some resources in these conferences and all these different things that you've done that I can use? Because a lot of times the directors, they don't know what you need if nobody says anything. Okay. So if it is, hey, we have a harmful language problem, they know who in your direct community can support you and help you with that. You shouldn't have to do this work alone. Okay. Next one. So never forget your tools for self-reflection. It always comes back to us. Always, 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 right? Check your own language and bias, always, and trust and believe we're still guilty of it. Nobody's perfect. Okay, nobody. Build that classroom so that it really shows respect and accountability. I know I used to have up in my office space where it said, when they were coming into my office, it would say, enter to learn. And then when they got in my office and they're walking out the door, at the top, it says, leave to serve. I'm constantly reminding them of what the expectation is. You're coming in here to learn something, but when you get out of here, my expectation is you are doing good things. You are growing. Affirmations make all the difference. You can put those around a campus where they're constantly reminded. I'm trying to think of the other one we used to say. Discipline yourself so no one else has to. Reminding them of the expectation. You start doing that kind of stuff, you're going to start seeing these phrases and stuff, they start dwindling away because they realize, okay, wait, I'm going to disappoint somebody. Yeah, you are. Okay? Model corrective behavior. It's not punitive all the time. It doesn't have to be. It can be both. And if we do that work, we'll see the shift and change. So the next time a kid walks into a bathroom and has this intuition, I'm going to write the N word on a stall, somebody's going to say, don't do it. Don't do it. They will think twice. Okay. And then ongoing professional development. Call me. I have partners, I have teammates, I have people that can help you. If you, I mean, even supporting with teachers. Dr. Harris, don't hate me for this, but Dr. Harris is at UC Merced and she is working with teachers on a regular basis, creating curriculums and educational functional spaces to detour things like this now. And she's available she's at UC Merced. It's a research college, right? So there are people out there that can help you if you really, truly want to dig in and get this done. And we can't be afraid. I know we living in a time where somebody's telling us we can't do certain things. I need everybody on this call and you telling all of your staff and your teammates, if anything, more than ever, we must all dig in. I don't want it to be Black folks and their allies. No, I want it to be as Americans, as humans, we care. And we're not going to stand for this anymore. And it's not okay. So if you want to continue this, and I know Babatunde and them are going to share that, and Shay is going to share more about it, that's what this is about. Okay? So just know that hopefully this helped. You can come off mute if you have questions about anything, but I am truly grateful for the opportunity that we've had to grow together. I know I've grown over the last 6 weeks with all of you because it's showing me where I need to continue to improve myself to support more of you. So with that, Shay, Babatunde, I am done. But if you have questions, you all, please, this is the time because we've got, I think, about 5 minutes left before Shay closes us out.
I just want to make a comment, Dr. Barfield. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for such a good conversation, that really inspires us as teachers. I think for me, when you were speaking, you're speaking through the trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed language that we need to emphasize within the education peers, but also the students themselves. Realizing that the widespread of the impact of trauma, you speak into that. Kids come in our class, we don't know their experiences. And they've come from different schools. The words they have been hearing, they are paper cuts, slowly, and that tantamounts to trauma. And then we're not experienced into trauma-informed care, which is you are presenting precisely, that helps us to really realize that is something that we need to realize first. And then when we realize, then we are recognizing these are the stories that you are bringing to us, that we have to realize and recognize these signs. Mm-hmm. The signs are those words that we see written around in these corners in our schools. So if we recognize that as teachers, then we need to respond. How do we respond? the response is not about what's wrong with you. It is what happened. What happened to you? It is you are being good before you become bad. But we come from, okay, thinking you are a mini kid, is a fighting kid, is a fighter kid, maybe their family they don't take care. We start blaming, and not coming from a strength based that these are good kids. These are wonderful kids. Something is happening. And you need to be sensitive enough to come from empathy to understand where they're coming from. So you are actually sparing us to resist traumatizing, re-traumatizing our communities, our students. So this is really, really wonderful. I'm really happy to be part and to attend this, Mr. Babatunde. Thank you so much again to see you here. And this, I'm teaching here at Fresno State University, but these are the things that I teach. And Dr. Barfield, I mean, coming into that and then sounding us that, I'm incredibly delighted to be here. So thank you so much. That's my short comment that I want to make.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Dr. Barfield that you all may have?
I just want to say thank you before I log off. One of my colleagues, Maria Alvarado, she was actually on the other ones. And so I finally got in to join today because she had been telling me about it. And so I'm so happy I did. Dr. Barfield, I also follow you on your work because I also work with our BSU and Emoji and all the things. So I really hope that if you guys do something like this again, I don't know, I had to turn on my notifications for you guys so that I get all of the emails now because I'm so mad that I missed this. But thank you so much. It's really filled my cup today. I hope all of you have a great day and just thank you.
Of course. And Nicole, to that point, I know we're running against time, but in January, we do want to start kicking off a monthly session that continues this work and the conversation. And so I will personally send you the email when we have all that finalized, but for everyone that's on the call, we do want to continue to have this conversation. So more information will be sent out in December, and to anyone who's attended the past webinars, because this is like really, really important work. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Barfield, for leading the conversation. And if there isn't any other questions, have a good rest of your day. We'll be here for questions, and then stay tuned for our emails and communications.
Thank you, everyone.